Hi everyone, it's Hikari no Yume here. So as many of you know, we are the original developers of and project lead for toolchain. It's a high-level emulator for iPhone OS applications. More specifically, it runs basically really old 32-bit iOS apps from 2008 to 2011 or so, hence iPhone OS because it was called that back then. And one of the things about developing an emulator for an ancient mobile OS is that sometimes you need to be able to make new apps for that old OS in order to test things and for certain other purposes. And unfortunately, iOS is a proprietary platform controlled by Apple, so the best way to make apps for iOS has always been to use Apple's tools, Xcode. Xcode is the name of Apple's tools. And unfortunately, because we're targeting old versions of iOS, we've had to use ancient versions of Xcode and ancient versions of macOS that could run ancient versions of Xcode. And we had to run that in a virtual machine using VirtualBox, and it really just sucks in so many ways. It's incredibly painful. And also there's all sorts of unfortunate things about it. But recently, some wonderful contributors to toolchain, not us, other contributors, have made this thing called the Common 3.0 SDK. It's a brand new SDK for legacy iOS, 32-bit iOS, that only uses open source sources. It's legally clean, we're not doing anything fishy, it's not based on any previous SDK project because we don't trust any of them. It works on macOS, it works on Linux, I believe it also even works on Windows, which is amazing. And recently, we have even got it working in our CI and our internal tooling so that we can build our unit tests, because there is this little app called Test App that contains a bunch of unit tests that we run inside toolchain to check that toolchain is working properly. So that's cool, but we have only been running Test App on fake iOS inside toolchain. We have not been using this SDK to build anything that runs on actual iOS. Wouldn't that be cool? Well, earlier today, we decided, why don't we try it? Maybe this SDK works well enough that it can produce apps that actually run on real iOS, such as on this iPod Touch here. This thing is a 3rd gen iPod Touch. If we see here, 5.1.1 iOS version, 32-bit ARM v7. What could we run something on this? Well, we tried to build something on this, but it didn't work. And it didn't work because, guess what? Our SDK does a few things that break the rules that toolchain accepts but real iOS doesn't. One of those is that it forgets to actually link the frameworks it's using. So it uses the libc properly, but it's not linking in the Objective-C runtime or Foundation or UIKit or anything else like that. So the app didn't run. Now, if we were normal people who are not insane, then what we would do at this point is be like, yes, we should fix our toolchain so that it actually links the frameworks that it uses. However, we are not normal people and we are not completely sane. So what we did instead was we have written an entire little UIKit application that does not link against UIKit or even the Objective-C framework. Look at this. We use dlopen to open the Objective-C runtime. We then open the Foundation framework and the UIKit framework. We then use dlsim to look up all the magic Objective-C runtime methods that you need to look up classes. And by the way, Objective-C is so dynamic we could even construct new classes here if we wanted to. But we don't do that. What we do instead is we do this thing. And if you have ever looked inside an Xcode project template, you should recognize these 3 lines, because this is the heart of every UIKit app ever, which is to say basically every iOS app ever. the first thing the app does is it creates an NS auto release pool, then it invokes UI application main, passing in argc argv, and then it passes in the UI application class and the UI application delegate class. And in this case, we have chosen to use NSObject. And why did we use NSObject? Because creating an actual delegate class would be a bunch of work, and there aren't actually any requirements for the application delegate except that it inherits from NSObject or follows the protocol or something. So we just decided, what if we use NSObject as the UI application delegate? Why not? And then we release the auto-release pool. Anyway, the point is, this is an absolutely insane way to write an iOS application. But does it work? Well, first of all, you might wonder, does it build? And the answer is, of course, once we get to the test, it does in fact build. Where the hell does it? Right, we build it here. And then when you try to run it in TouchHLE inside the testing mode, it complains that this can't run in headless mode, which makes sense. We are building a graphical UIKit-based app. It can't run in headless mode. So let's run it not headless. Whoa, look at this, the most exciting app ever. This is not just a black rectangle, it's a really cool black rectangle. Yeah, anyway. More importantly though, sure it runs in TouchHLE, but does it run on the real deal? Let's find out. Well, we can make an IPA, which is just a zip file, a fancy zip file, and then this is fucking unbelievable, right? Okay, so look at this. Look at this. This is a jailbroken iOS 5.1.1 was it device, right? It's an iPod Touch. iPod Touches are cool. Note, there is no app called Test App here. This is macOS Monterey, I believe. A quite modern version of iOS, macOS, although not modern enough that Apple still support it. And look, you can drag an IPA file. Drag an IPA file onto the device, and look at this. Look, it actually syncs it. You can still drag IPA files onto iOS devices in modern macOS. Like, what the fuck? Why is this feature still there? They removed that feature from iTunes like 8 years ago. Why is this here? Anyway, it works. And look, we've installed the app on the home screen. Whoa. But you see, that's just an icon. Does it run? You bet it does. It's a fucking black square. World's most exciting black square. Now, if that's not convincing you, just you wait. Actually, this video's gone on for too long. Yeah. Wow. Again, special shout out to the TouchHLE contributors that made this happen. Abnormal Maps did a ton of work on this and a bunch of other stuff. They did some really cool stuff. But the real hero of the SDK project is this person, Alexander Levich, I believe. They're a real hero. Yeah. Open source